Okay, I want you to imagine something. A technology that practically overnight doubles your internet speed, and it lets you talk on the phone while you're surfing the web at the same time. The crazy part? It did all of this using the same old telephone wire that was already in your house. Long before we had fiber optics, long before Wi-Fi was even a thing, there was this incredible piece of tech, the essential first step into the digital world we live in now. So today we're going to pull back the curtain on the unsung hero of the 90s internet, ISDN.
To really get why ISDN was such a game changer, you have to go back in time. You gotta remember that sound, the screeching, the static, that whole dial-up modem handshake. Man, you'd sit there for what felt like an eternity for just one single web page to load. And oh my gosh, if someone picked up the phone, game over. Your connection was dead because that one single precious phone line had to do everything, and it could only ever do one thing at a time.
All right, so here's the plan for today. We're going to start by reminding ourselves what the world on dial-up was really like. Then we'll talk about how this digital lifeline, ISDN, showed up. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of how it worked, this whole two-lane data highway idea. We'll see what it meant for homes and businesses, and then wrap it all up by looking at its role as the bridge to the broadband we all use today. Sound good?
Okay, first up, the world on dial-up. We really need to talk about the limitations of the analog age. Because to understand why ISDN was such a big deal, you first have to understand the problem it was trying to fix.
So this was the heart of the problem. This was the bottleneck. The entire telephone network, the PSTN, it was all built for one thing: human voices. That wire running from your house to the phone company's office, what they called the local loop, it carried an analog signal. It was perfect for talking, but it was never designed to handle the huge amounts of data the internet was suddenly trying to push through it.
And this really breaks it down, right? On one side, you've got the analog signal. It was designed for voice. It had super limited bandwidth, and you could only do one thing at a time, talk or send data. It was like a bumpy one-lane country road. But on the other side, you have the digital signal. This was the future. It was designed for data, it could handle way higher speeds, and, this is the key, it could support multiple channels at once. It was a superhighway.
Right. So into this mess, into this analog bottleneck, comes a digital lifeline, a solution that promised to finally get us out of that dial-up prison. So what exactly is ISDN?
I mean, the name itself pretty much tells you everything you need to know. Integrated services. Why? Because it brought voice and data together, seamlessly. Digital network. Why? Because for the very first time, the connection was digital from end to end. It got rid of that slow, analog last mile that was holding everything back. So you can see this was a huge, huge upgrade. It's sending a digital signal, not analog. It's letting multiple things happen at once. It's giving you way better speeds, much lower latency. But honestly, here's the most genius part of the whole thing. It did all of this using the exact same copper phone wires that were already inside the walls of every home and office. They didn't have to rewire the entire planet. That's incredible.
Okay, so how did it actually do this? How did one boring old copper wire suddenly start acting like a two-lane data highway? Well, this is where we get into the real magic of how ISDN worked.
All right, so the first piece of the puzzle is something called the B channel. The B stands for bearer channel, and you can just think of this as the main traffic lane on our highway. It's a clean 64 kilobit per second digital path, and it's the workhorse. This is the lane that carries your actual stuff, whether that's your voice call or your internet data.
Then you've got the D channel, or delta channel, and this was the really smart part. If the B channels are the lanes of traffic, the D channel is like the control tower or the service road running alongside the highway. Its only job was to handle all the signaling. Setting up a call, tearing it down. And because it had its own lane, it meant the main B channels were kept completely clear for just your data and your voice. No congestion.
And here's how that all came together to create the magic. Check this out. Your voice call goes down the first B channel lane, your internet session cruises along on the second B channel lane, and the whole time, that little D channel is off to the side, managing all the signals. And what's the result? Boom. You can be on the phone and browsing the web at the exact same time. It was revolutionary. This was real, honest-to-goodness digital multitasking. Now, ISDN wasn't a one-size-fits-all thing. It was actually a pretty flexible technology that came in a couple of different flavors, depending on whether you were just a regular person at home or a giant business. So here are the two main types you'd see. For most of us at home or in a small office, you'd get what's called a BRI, or Basic Rate Interface.
That gave you those two B channels we were talking about, plus the little D channel, perfect for a phone call and an internet session. But for big companies, there was the PRI, the primary rate interface. And this thing was a beast. It was like a massive digital pipeline bundling 23 B channels, or even 30 in Europe, to run an entire office's phone and data. So if this was so great, why aren't we all still using ISDN? That's a great question. And the answer really gets at its most important place in history, its role as the bridge to broadband. Yeah, this timeline really puts it all into perspective, doesn't it? I mean, you start in the 80s with the slow, painful crawl of analog modems. Then, bam! In the 90s, ISDN shows up, and it's this massive leap forward. Now, it wasn't the final answer, right? Things like DSL and frame relay came along pretty soon after with even faster, always-on connections. But look where ISDN is. It's that absolutely vital step right in the middle of it all.
And this is really the key takeaway. ISDN was so important because it was the technology that proved we were all hungry for something better. We wanted faster, more reliable digital connections. It created the demand, it set the expectations, and that's what pushed the development of the true broadband stuff, like DSL and fiber that we use today. It wasn't the end of the road, but it was the essential, revolutionary bridge that got us from the analog past to our digital future.
So that kind of leaves us with a really interesting question to chew on, right? What technology that you and I use every single day, what's our modern ISDN? What's the essential but maybe temporary bridge that we're all on right now that's just paving the way for whatever the next big digital revolution is going to be? Something to think about.